Taking sharp macro photos out in the field can be a real challenge sometimes. The shallow depth of field in macro photography and other elements such as the wind, moving subjects, and your camera settings can be a lot to deal with, especially for beginners. In this video, I'm going to talk about possible reasons why your photos are not sharp and offer solutions for each problem. Reason number one why your photos are not as sharp as you like is because you are not using the right gear. Lenses such as telephoto lenses and other non-macro lenses are great for taking full body shots of larger bugs such as dragonflies and butterflies, for example, but they are not designed to capture those close-up details of the eyes and textures of smaller subjects. If your goal is to get those close-up details nice and sharp, then make sure the lens you are using is a true macro lens that will go up to 1:1 magnification. But the good thing is that you don't need a macro lens to get sharp close-up shots. There are some great budget options such as these three that can turn any lens into a macro lens. Also, if you already have a macro lens, pairing it with extension tubes or a Raynox 250 will increase the magnification and help get sharp images of those extra small subjects. Reason number two why your photos may not look as sharp as you like is because of the shallow depth of field in your photo. Depth of field in macro photography is naturally very shallow, so it may make your image not look as sharp because only a very small part of the photo is in focus, like this example here. But luckily there is a technique that can increase the depth of field in your photos, and that technique is called focus stacking. Focus stacking is the combination of multiple images that are focused on different parts of the subject, which are then combined using editing software such as Photoshop to create one final image with a deeper depth of field. I have a more in-depth video on this topic, and I will link that video at the end of this one if you are interested in learning more about focus stacking. Reason number three why your images may not be as sharp is because of lens diffraction. Diffraction, in short, is an optical element which limits the total resolution of a photo. This happens mostly when you shoot with a narrow aperture of f/20 and higher. You may think that a higher f-stop of f/20 or higher may make your images sharper, but it will do the opposite, and it will oftentimes affect the overall quality and sharpness of your photo. The solution for this is to figure out an f-stop range where your lens is the sharpest at. Every lens' sharpest aperture is different, but it's usually best to stay somewhere in the middle because a wide open aperture depth of field will be very shallow, and a narrow aperture will result in diffraction. Reason number four is because of motion blur. Motion blur in your photos can happen for a few reasons. It could either be because the subject started moving, the wind started blowing, insufficient shutter speeds, or a shaky hand. Having a speed light flash will help tremendously because it will help you make gains in the shutter speed, usually up to the camera's maximum flash sync speed, and the extra light and shutter speed can be the difference between a blurry and a sharp image. But even with a flash, it is still important to make sure your camera and the subject you are shooting are stable while you're taking photos. If it is a windy day out and you are trying to photograph a flower or your subject is on a plant or twig, try holding the stem in one hand for extra stability while you are taking photos. If you are mostly a natural light shooter, then it is extra crucial for your camera and subject to be as stable as possible, because even the slightest movement of your camera or subject will show in the image if your shutter speed is too slow. I recommend keeping your shutter speeds no slower than 1/200th of a second. Reason number 5 is because you are not using a diffuser. A diffuser is a vital piece of equipment for a macro photographer, especially if you use a speedlight flash, because a diffuser will soften and even out the light from your flash. Not having a diffuser can result in harsh shadows and highlights on your subjects, and sometimes those details within the shadows and highlights can't be recovered. But luckily, diffusers are pretty easy to make, and you don't need expensive materials either. Like my DIY diffuser is made out of just paper and shrink wrap, and I think the diffusion is pretty good. I'll link the tutorial video at the end if you are interested in making one yourself. If you don't want to make a diffuser, then there are people out there that make diffusers and sell them, such as AK Diffuser and Cygnus Tech. Both of their diffusers are easily some of the best out there, so I definitely recommend them if you are looking to buy one. Reason number 6 is because you're shooting in direct sunlight. Shooting in direct sunlight will result in very harsh highlights, and those harsh highlights oftentimes can't be fixed, which means a loss of details. The trick for this is to figure out a way to block the sun while you are taking photos. You could either block it with your diffuser if you are close enough, or hold an arm out like I did for this shot, or if you are out with somebody, have them stand and block the sun while you're taking photos. As long as it's blocked, that's all that matters. My last quick tip for sharper images is to sharpen your image in post-processing with whatever software you use. This will give the details and textures in your photos an extra boost, but just be careful not to over-sharpen it because it can ruin an image. There's a lot that can go into getting a sharp image, but always remember that the biggest keys for quality photos are a good camera and subject stabilization to avoid motion blur, and figuring out the sharpest aperture range for your lens. You don't need the most expensive gear to take sharp macro photos either. As long as it's a macro lens or you're using one of the 3 budget options I listed earlier in this video, then it is possible for you to take great macro photos. If you like this video, then make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.